The McLaughlins are a perfectly ordinary Liverpool family. Ordinary, that is, except for one thing. Jim and May McLaughlin, Mum and Dad, are completely deaf. They've never heard their two children play, or laugh, or cry. Though Matthew and Samantha hear and speak normally, they have to use sign language to communicate with their parents. In this film, Jim and May's words are spoken for us by interpreters. They tell the extraordinary story of a perfectly ordinary family.
Samantha was about 7 years old and she was going to school. And when she came home from school, I looked at her and she didn't look very happy at all. And I said, "What's the matter with you?" And she said, "Oh, nothing, nothing, I'm all right." But I knew something was the matter and she kept saying, "Oh, nothing, nothing." So I just left her. And the next day I went to the school to pick her up from school and I waited there. And when my daughter came out, I saw her head drop down and all the children were looking at me and saying, "There's Samantha's mother, she's deaf." I noticed all the children looking at me. That was very cool. And when my daughter came, I said, "Are you all right, Samantha?" And she said, she kept her head down. She didn't want me coming. "Come on." And off we walked. And I said, "Take no notice of them." But she was obviously upset.
Because she's different from everyone else, and if she's talking to me, they'll, "What's happening here?" And they're looking, and they're staring, and then, they ask questions, and which I don't like to answer. They ask, "How did they do this and how did they do that? I mean, can you drive?" They think with them deaf they can't drive. I say, "Oh yes, you can drive." "Is your house rented?" I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, I would have thought they wouldn't be able to buy a house. They wouldn't know how to go through to solicitors and do the normal routine." To me, she seems like, like everyone else, the same. Only that she's deaf and she can't hear and she can't use the phone. But to other people, she's someone completely different. Someone who can't do anything at all.
Our children, you see, they've been born into a deaf world as well. And when they had their first words with us, they'd be signing, and we'd be signing. Things like, "Good boy, do you want to sleep?" and so on. Of course, I sent them both to a nursery school, don't forget, so that their voices would be clear and they'd learn more language. It's really worth it for the hearing children. It's wonderful for them at their age.
We've always tried to look after our two children's needs. I bought Matthew a computer bike. It's got lots of gadgets, and it's got a radio. He loved it. I was keen on cycle racing when I left school. I was picked to enter the British Cycling Championships. I was junior cycling champion, and I won 2 cups. Matthew's very competitive. He loves cycling too. Maybe he takes after me. We'll see.
My house is too quiet. Every time I come home, they switch the radio off and things like that, and it's too quiet for them. I often switch the television on and leave it on all the time so the children can hear it, otherwise they're going to get bored. I can understand how they feel, because I'm used to a quiet life. But the children need to hear far more, and that's why I never stop them. I like them to go out to enjoy themselves.
Come on, down again. Lively. Look for someone in a big space, not the person next to you.
When they're both at school, I feel really happy for them. To know that my two children can hear and talk, and they're at school and they're happy.
When my mother took me to the deaf school, I can just remember a little bit. I went in the school hall, and I didn't know what it was. The teachers used sign language to teach us everything. We did things like woodwork, needlecraft and art. And because of that, lots of deaf children, when they left, got good jobs, like me. I became a sculptor because of the artwork I did at school. And I could read and write better than some of the children leaving school now.
I went to school, to St Mary's School. It was a convent school, and I was 3.5 years old. And I was a boarder there. And we were all taught by nuns, writing, English and lip reading. And the nun used to get me to learn to speak, and she used to use a pencil. Oh, and I hated it. I felt really sick. I wanted to sign and lip read and sign, but no, the nun said to me, no, you're good at lip reading. But I wanted to use my hands, and no, she forced me to just speak and lip read. I used to get very, very frustrated. And I saw some of the older girls, the ones who couldn't talk, and they were really good at signing and one-handed finger spelling. And I couldn't wait till I was older. And one day I got out and went and met the older ones and asked them to learn and teach me. And I went backwards and forwards and learnt till I felt really good, and I was really good. And I said to my other friend, I can do one-handed finger spelling.
Although I was very good at drawing and painting when I left the deaf school, I couldn't get a job. But my uncle brought me here to the Blue Coat Centre to see the boss. And he said to him, he's good at drawing, and he's done a bit of wood carving. The boss gave me a week's trial. I did very well indeed, and I became a permanent worker for him. I was 16 when I started here. I'm 49 now. There's just the three of us here. The deaf man, he's called Adrian. He's a carpenter, and he restores antiques. The other one, Neville, he's a hearing man. He works as a clockmaker. He helps us a lot with all the phone calls. I'm happy here. There's a lovely atmosphere, and people are friends with me.
Oh, good morning, dear. It's Mr. Spencer at the Blue Coat Chambers. I'm ringing on behalf of Jim McLaughlin, the sculptor at Studio 49. He ordered some Nabrasina stone from you.
I often have to ask him to phone out for me.
Weeks ago.
And communication
Can
can
you
be
tell
a
me what
bit
the current state of
difficult.
the parties is?
I've got to write the message down first, of course. But Neville's a very nice man, and he's got used to doing it for us now. My daughter, Samantha, she does business calls for me too. But the problem is that I have to explain to her what I wanted to say, and sometimes she doesn't understand the business technicalities, and I get a bit frustrated. She probably started doing phone calls for my wife and me when she was about 7 or 8. Just simple ones, perhaps to my family. But now she helps us a lot on the phone. She's growing up now, of course, and she's a good interpreter. And she's a great help to me and May.
I asked my daughter to use the phone, yes. Sometimes I feel sorry for my daughter. I'm a bit of a nuisance asking her to phone too much, really. But she's got a lot of patience with me.
They think I'm cheeky, you know. They say, why don't you get your mum on the phone? I say, well, she can't. And, you know, they go around and say she's a cheeky, you know, she's only 15 and she's cheeky. She's really cheeky, you know. But it's not me who's being cheeky. It's what I've got to say, what my mum wants me to say, you know. And, you know, a lot of people in the streets have said, you know, oh, isn't she cheeky? But it's because my mum can't say it to them. I've got to say it, so I'm just like an interpreter. But they don't see it as that.
Use your hand to indicate. Well, space, Vivian. Good girl, Samantha.
I do really often feel sorry for the
Come on,
two
be
kids.
moving quickly into a space. Hard luck, Lisa. A brown throw in.
And that's why I do like them to go out and make friends, to enjoy life, to join youth clubs, and to stay at friends' houses because of all the noise and conversation and language that's going on there.
Come on. Mark. Yes, good girl.
When my daughter Samantha was born, my parents and family worried because they lived so far away, in Ireland. They really worried about us being deaf and having to look after the young children. There are a lot of problems because, especially when my daughter was young, we couldn't have a phone at home, not till she got older. Before that, perhaps, I used to have to ask the people next door or over the road, ask them for help. One woman next door but one was very glad to help me a lot. She understood I couldn't phone or communicate with the doctor, so she would always phone the doctor or the hospital to come to see the children when they were ill. I had to learn from other people who told me what to do, but with Matthew it was easier. I'd got experience. When the baby cries, you use an alarm by the cot, which sets off a flashing light. If the baby's hungry or uncomfortable, perhaps with a wet nappy or something, or it's too cold or it's got wind, then you know to pick them up. And as they get older, they get more used to you, and sometimes, you know, they're naughty, and you watch them, and you have to tell them and smack them so they know not to touch things, and then they turn to look at me, for example, my child, so they know that means I don't want them to touch, and if they do it again, then you stop them and smack them again, and they turn around and look, or I smack them on the bum. And then I show them that they've been good, and I give them a cuddle or a tickle on the tummy so that they know they've been a good girl. They know they mustn't be naughty, so that they know if they're naughty they get a smack bottom, and I teach them that way.
Mum's always tried to push me and make me come forward and straight and speak up for myself and don't let anyone get you down. But I think I've gradually got better. You know, she's, at first I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was very quiet and very shy, but she's pushed me, and I have, you know, the real me has come out.
But the second son, I'm worried about him. Will it be the same as Samantha? What am I going to do? I've got to keep cool, perhaps not use sign language at first in front of the other children. But, you know, the mothers look very happy. Why am I any different, you know, when he comes out?
When my wife went to the school to pick Matthew up, Matthew didn't want his mum to sign, with the children watching her. He didn't want her signing to him. And he kept tapping her to put her hands away and saying, after, after. And she says, oh, well, all right. I used to get angry when I was playing with hearing children because they used to tease me, and I really used to lose my temper. I got into fights, and I don't like people teasing me. I couldn't help it, you know. This is how deaf children feel. My own parents found it difficult to communicate with me. They knew I couldn't understand them. They used a little bit of sign language, and from that I could understand, but not properly, not proper sign language. Not like sign language that I use. It was just very simple. They just left me alone, really. They didn't bother to talk to me. Really, I know they couldn't cope with me.
Same size.
My father was very depressed when I became deaf. He thought he'd never be able to teach me anything.
Good call. I'll pick him up.
My mum died when I was 7. My auntie came to live with us, and 10 years later my father got married to her.
Come on. Okay.
Often when I get a really complicated job, like this one, the architect wants me to sculpt a new arm for a statue. The customer has to put most of his instructions in writing for me. They'll ask me about the cost, to quote for how much it's going to cost and how long the job will take. I can usually understand quite well using signs and writing, and a bit of lip reading. It's not easy, though.
Patinate. Patinate them. Yes, the ends of the bowls. All right? With a brass brush. Yes, yes. You're going to make pieces to let into there after you've made the fixings. All right? So, when you receive the new parts, we'll put it all together, and then you can clean off these pieces, these bits of dirt here. All right? Clean those off, and then we'll repatinate all the bare patches and the new parts, so that we give the statue the same overall effect. You understand?
The deaf community in Liverpool is very small. It's such a close community. News travels really fast. We go to a deaf club and we see a lot of deaf people talking, and I like to know what's going on. I'm really nosy, you know, and I often think I've missed out, and I like to walk round and know what's going on, to join in the gossip. I'm really interested in gossip. We stay close to the deaf community because we learn things. It's better than being with hearing people because we hear all the news. Hearing people are all right. They tell us news from the radio and so on, but there's a big gap. With the deaf community, I've got better communication and lots of friends. We do need company and communication, and to be able to talk to each other naturally.
This deaf and blind bloke, Alfred, Mum visits him. He knows who you are by touch and feel. You know, you don't have to say who you are. I mean, you come in and you feel your face and your hair. And you always recognise Mum. You know, he does that, and she just says it's me, and you went to thought that. There's a special sign for the blind, you know, with the hand. She can do it very good, you know, it's also it's something, yeah, I can't do it. He's been a carpenter all his life, joiner. He's got a little workshop, you know, and even though he turned blind, he still carries on, you know, he makes tables and baskets and chairs.
I met lots of hearing girls in my cycling days when I was young. I was with a friend in the bar underneath the Everyman, and there was this hearing girl there. We started talking. We got on well together. Within a year we were married. She was my first wife. When I wanted my hearing wives to go to the deaf club, some of my deaf friends there knew my wife and knew she could sign. But few of them bothered to talk to her and communicate with her. And when we got home, she'd ask me why. Why don't the deaf people bother to talk to me? They know I can sign. That's why, in the end, my wife didn't want to go to the deaf club. And she went less and less and less. And she started going out with hearing people from her work to a hearing club. A rifle club she joined. And also a sailing club. And that's how she met and fell in love with another person through her work. About a year before we separated, I suspected it. Sometimes my wife would bring a hearing man home, and I'd think, is it her lover? But I never complained. I just knew and realised that we didn't suit each other. I didn't want arguments about it. I didn't want to say, where have you been? What have you been doing? That wasn't my way. After the divorce, I stayed single for 5 years and had a good time. I'd go to clubs, perhaps 3 times a week. And at this time in my life, I was really drinking, quite heavily. And then I met my second wife, May. I met her at the deaf club. I'd always thought to be married to a hearing girl would be better. A hearing girl would have more understanding than a deaf girl. But really, most deaf and hearing marriages don't last long at all.
I sometimes went out with hearing men, but it was difficult for them to communicate with me. So I thought it was better then to go out with deaf men. It was more thrilling, the communication was better, and then I'd think, oh, well, I'd go out and try and go out with a hearing boy, but, you know, we'd just have to go out to the pictures and for a drink, and I couldn't communicate, and it was much better going back and going out with a deaf man. I like to talk to him, communicate with him as a person. He'd got a lot of respect, he'd got lovely manners. I really did like him. He wasn't like other people, he was a very quiet man. Then he asked me out for another date and I went out with him. And then we carried on from there and we've been very happy.
Sometimes she wishes she could hear, you know. But I think it's there, nothing she can do about it. She just gets on with life, you know, and I don't think, she doesn't know what, you see, she thinks she isn't missing anything, you see. You know, I listen to the radio or the television. You know, she's never heard it, so she doesn't know what she's missing, so she's quite happy as she is. She just wants to get on with life, do what she wants to do. So I have to go in, I don't in a big wooden box, so I just have to go in the ground.
Go in the ground or go into a tub, whichever you want, to dwarf willow?
Yeah.
If I could hear, I suppose I'd like to listen to the radio, you know, and hear what people are talking about, overhearing other people's conversations, and the general noises of people, and traffic, all that.
She always asks me, how can you hear the birds? And I say, oh, it's so sweet. It's just going so you can't. I just said you just cannot describe it. I mean, if you could describe it, I don't know how to. You know, it's so sweet, and you know, and
I can't imagine hearing at all. When I'm alone, perhaps watching television, and there's classical music on, I get a feeling from watching it. I feel that it must be beautiful. It's how I feel. It must be beautiful.